All right, welcome back to the Progressive Podiatry Project. As always, I'm your host, Alicia Reeve, and today I've tracked down New Balance maestro Matty Spicer, who is no longer at New Balance. He lives at Ultrafootball in Melbourne, and I'm looking to inject a lot more football information as far as managing injuries and footwear, which is something that I think clinicians pretty well Australian, if not internationally wide, we're probably not as across football boots and managing football-related injuries as what we are when we say look at running shoes and running footwear. So we've got Sam Turner, that football podiatrist, who he is actually going to be presenting quite a few webinars throughout the subscription, and he's a good friend of P3, as is Matt. But today we're just going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive in starting to look at, one, what Ultrafootball is and how it can fit into sort of the injury management and performance realm for allied health professionals, and then bouncing off Sam a little bit to give us a little bit of an insight as to how football boots, the prescriptive elements and injury management can actually work for us in clinical practice. So welcome, guys. Matt, it's great to see you.
Thank you. I love being on the P3 podcast. It's awesome.
Good mates. I always love having you here. And likewise, Sam.
Yeah, it's good to be back. See, it's been a while since... In 6 months since we've been on, Matt.
Yeah. About 12 months, actually.
12.
A lot has happened.
Oops.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of the way and let Matt and Sam give you a little bit of a rundown of what Matt's new role is, what he's doing here at Ultrafootball, what the vision is for it, and then Sam can probably talk a little bit as to how his relationship with Ultrafootball works and how it might work for you.
Hi there, I'm Talisha Reeve, podiatrist, clinical educator and injury rehabilitator, and this is the Progressive Podiatry Project. We're here to share knowledge, insights and information to evolve your clinical practice and, most importantly, help you help your clients.
So guys, you may remember me from my previous role at New Balance, where I was National Tech Manager. So I finished up there, would have been end of November 2023, moved across here to Ultrafootball at our Abbotsford store in Melbourne. I started here a month ago, so it's still very fresh, still really new, still learning the business. But my new role here is a little different to what I was doing at MB. So I'm head of product and e-commerce. So I do all the buying and the ranging for Ultrafootball for both Abbotsford and our Sydney store as well, which is in Alexandria down near the airport. And then I manage their e-com team, so making sure that our online store is running smoothly, launches are all on time and things like that. So I guess it'd be good to kind of educate everyone a little bit about Ultra. So Ultrafootball was born out of a teamwear business about 7 or 8 years ago, so still relatively new. But the landscape within football has just changed so much, not only from a product point of view, but also from a lifestyle culture point of view too. So the store here in Melbourne, it's about 2,500 square metres big. It's enormous, like a supermarket. We have a football pitch right in the middle of it, so you can try your boots, you can have a kick around if you want. We do kids' parties on the pitch as well at weekends, which is phenomenal. We've got every kind of replica jersey you can think of. We've got we've got a whole teamwear department where we kit out about 250 clubs around the country. We've got a full customization area, so we've got about 10 printing machines. You can get your favourite players' name and number. You can get your own name and number if you want. And then probably the key piece to our business is we have a massive boot room. So we have Nike, we have Adidas, we have New Balance, Mizuno, Diadora, Lotto. We've got a whole range of boots, all the best boots from all the best brands. So if you don't know much about our business, please have a look on Instagram, follow our Ultrafootball AU. We also do a lot of media pieces as well. So we do the Ultrafootball Mag, which details a lot about Australian football. But it's a business that both Sam and I have been passionate about over the years and kind of drawn us together through our love of football. So Sam, do you kind of want to let everyone know what your kind of relationship is with Ultra?
So this probably started about, it would have been
about 3 years ago, I reckon.
3 years ago with you and I just bouncing ideas and talking. Then, It was the start of the last year, or was it the year before?
Year before, 21.
22, sorry.
22. Yeah.
Where we had a phone conversation about setting up something. He said there's this fantastic store here in Melbourne. They've just started up. They would have been maybe 3 months old. And he said it's a football boot store. And I went, you're kidding. Have you heard about the one up? I said, yeah, well, they've brought it down to Melbourne. Like, it is just mecca for football type thing. So at that time, I was working in A-League, still working in A-League, and I was really getting into the technology booth. He said, come on. But then we were running an event with the launch of the Furon V6.
Yes, at that time,
which we weren't allowed to take photos, but this is the thing. And we had about 20 health professionals come to a little info night, which, for those involved, it was probably the best thing. It just started to open the eyes up rather than just sending to your local store where there's maybe one line of boots and you go, here you go, pick them out, nothing's in stock, and you buy a pair of boots just because they're there. So from that, we went, okay, we brought those 20 individuals in, and their eyes just opened up, and we started to get into really that nitty gritty type of things, and got to try on boots, got to walk around, have a kick of a ball, which is pretty much a unique experience for everyone.
Well, there's no one in this country who's doing anything like that on the scale that we are. We rival some of the best football specialty businesses in the world. We're the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, and we're the second largest in the world at the moment. So we're going to take over the world one day. Watch this space.
Yeah. So, and this is a big thing because in Australia, or really the Southern Hemisphere, it's the fact that it is so big, but you also have that range to be able to talk about. All your staff are just so knowledgeable when it comes to fitting someone with boots. They all play, but they know a boot probably more than you or I do. And those little intricate details that we can start to really fall back on. So, and that's probably going on to the next stage, is you guys have just released a medical program. For referrals.
Yeah, something that Ultra as a business hasn't done before. So, something from, obviously with my previous role with New Balance, was heavily involved in the medical community. So I really wanted to, leverage those relationships and provide an opportunity for medical professionals to have their patients looked after when they're needing football footwear. So, very much like your really good running stores that we have in Australia, Ultra try to pride themselves on not only the experience that you get when you're here in store, which is mind-blowing, but you get that level of expertise in football boots that you won't get anywhere else. So we have, as you said, Sam, we've got players playing in the NPL level, right down through. We've got a couple of players who have played for the Futsal Roos in indoor football as well. So they're what you would call classic boot nerds that work in our boot room. So they know everything there is to know about boots. They're trying them on all the time. They're wearing them. They're trialing them at training and in games. I'm bringing across a little bit of my expertise from a training point of view within MB, so not so much my role here, but I'm building a tech deck on all the products as well for the staff to read through so that they can keep up to date on all the changes, because, football's become like running in a way, where there's new drops every couple of weeks, there's new products releasing changes.
And that's the thing, it's hard to keep up because it's such a dynamic space at the moment where Nike's coming up with something different. Recently they had the GX2 that's released on a pretty successful GX1, and all these little things to try and keep up. So as a podiatrist, this is what we rely heavily on. So when we go to a place like the running company, where they are just so knowledgeable, and you go there and it's a wonderful experience and you leave feeling great. It's like you're walking on a cloud. It's probably the same thing here with that just high level of professionalism, expertise, and just that overall experience that you can, for me, it's probably been why I've been sending players here, and that has just been juniors, it's been NPL people, but also AFL. This is such a huge resource for AFL players and people who are working in that space that they don't necessarily know about it because of the perception of soccer or football. But half your players in AFL are wearing a Nike Tiempo, they're wearing a Puma Ultimate or a Future, and they're starting to use their more soccer-specific boots into that AFL setting. So for me, it's a no-brainer as to why we'd start sending people here. rather than just to your local store.
Well, I think also because not only do we have expertise, but we have the range. It's like our range is huge, and so because we're getting those new products in all the time, we're getting new colours, we're getting limited edition boots. Like even though our store is called Ultrafootball and we market towards the soccer code, we're absolutely not going to discriminate if someone's playing Aussie rules, league or union or anything that requires cleated footwear on the field. Like we want to service them. So if you feel comfortable that you want to send your patients to Ultrafootball to either get fitted up or to just experience what our store is about, send them in. So our stores are in Abbotsford in Melbourne and Alexandria in Sydney. We also have a very good online business with a pretty simple returns process if stuff doesn't fit. So I'm sure Talisha will be able to pin the code to the comments or something like that. So the code to get your patients a little bit of a discount is UFMEDREF10. So UFMEDREF 10. That will get them a 10% discount off their boot products. They can also buy a replica jersey if they want, or compression gear. We also stock that. So yeah, send them in. Just get them to say that code at the checkout, at the point of sale when they're doing that. We can also keep a note of which podiatrist or which physio or which clinic they came from, so that if you ever wanted to follow up on that, we can provide that information if the patient is okay with sharing that detail with you. And then also, if you're in the Sydney or Melbourne area, definitely encourage you to come in store and check it out, because it's a really awesome experience. That code also can be used online, so you just enter it at checkout. But we're happy for you to use it personally and for your family as well if you wish. So yeah, hoping to get everyone to understand our business, to help our business grow.
So that was a great intro from Matt and Sam regarding what they're doing here and just a little bit of background about what we're hoping to achieve. There was just one point I wanted to ask you a little bit more about. When you were talking about the medical referral program, would you be able to give us a little bit more of a rundown of sort of what that is? And Sam, I know you used it. So Maddie, if you can explain what the medical referral program is for clinicians, and then potentially Sam, how you utilised it, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely, I can talk about that, T. With the sort of the medical referral program that we're looking to kind of implement here at Ultra, I must preface it by saying it's in its infancy. It's something that's very new to this business, remembering that Ultra's only been around for 7 or so years, so we're not as established as some of the running businesses you might send your patients to. So I please ask for you to be patient with us. The idea is that if you have a patient who's got a foot pathology issue, has got blister issues that need managing, just needs a new pair of boots because they're getting pressure on their 5th and 4th Met, we want to be able to, I guess, care for them in the way that you want them cared for as the clinician, and have them come into our store and be able to try on a range of boots and see what's comfortable and see what is out there on the market, but also then be able to feel comfortable in their decision, because not only have they paid their good hard-earned money to come and see you to get fixed, but they've also wanting to then have to outlay money on a pair of new boots or multiple boots in some cases. So we want to make sure that we can offer them a service where they're getting fitted properly. And I know that's in 17 years in this industry now, I know how important that is to a podiatrist. So we want to make sure that as a business, we have the range. We have certainly the store to make you excited and want to buy stuff, but we also have the expertise in store with our staff, and our team is young in the boot room. I'm not going to deny that, but they all play football. They're all absolute boot nerds, and they're striving to know more. So conversations with your patients is going to help our team grow as well, because it will help increase their knowledge. So I know you've referred a little bit to us, which we're totally appreciative of, but how do you kind of go about it? What's your referral process?
So a lot of what happens, it starts in the consult room, and often we'll have people coming to us just not for a conversation about a pair of football boots. They generally come in with a preconceived idea that I'm going to wear a Nike Mercurial. And up until that point, if there's nothing being wrong in terms of loading, comfort, blisters, injury, generally they're pretty good. But once they start coming in and some things, they get little injuries or little niggles, this is when we're starting to form that prescription process. And we start having this conversation and you go, well, you're a Nike man or person. What then can we do? Let's have a look at a couple of options. Have you been fitted properly? Are you wearing your boots so your toes are scrunched up like that and you can't fit it in? You've got to use a tub of Vaseline to get it in.
Yeah.
And this is where we start thinking, okay, what do we start breaking it down? Is it fitting your foot? What's your loading history? And these are the little things that we can work with. And keeping in mind, like, we can tell someone to go get a boot. And we spoke about a couple of brands off camera that we can start to look at. But it's getting someone in to be able to try them on and go, actually, that fits my foot. That's so much more comfortable.
Well, 9 times out of 10, it's about education, isn't it? They've worn a Mercurial Vapor for the last 5-6 years, but they're getting all this pain through their toes because it's too narrow for them.
And this is the thing. So where we can send somewhere like the running company, but to here, we get a similar type of experience where we can actually get that fitting process. But then as a clinician, we're looking at different features of what we can do in a boot. So if someone comes in with a sesamoid injury, which is quite common in football and Aussie rules to that matter, what features can we start looking at in different types of boots? And going to your staff and having that confidence in your staff to be say, we need something that's a little bit stiffer at the front of the foot, or we need something that hugs the MLA a little bit more. And you go, I've just got the boot. I'm going to go for a crazy fast in that instance. And it's having that ability to be able to go through. And so far, it's been great. And yes, we're going to work on these little teething issues, but it is growing so much. And the more that you refer and the more you get back, it just starts growing and everyone gets a better service and a better outcome than what we would previously go try them on. Oh yeah, they sort of fit, but they don't really. And we keep on falling back into this cycle where we get poor outcomes year after year after year. Whereas we want to get people back on the pitch. We want them performing. We want them comfortable and to have a good experience.
Well, and also I think it comes down to with the cost of living that we're all dealing with today. Yes, football boots are expensive. Going to your podiatrist can get expensive at times. And so we want to make sure that there's value there for the person, be it our customer, your client. We want to make sure that, they're getting looked after, they're getting the product that they need to perform. So should we go through some boot tech then?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, guys. I think that was a really good overview of the medical referral program that you're doing here at Ultrafootball. And I think one thing that I really picked up on from what you were discussing is it's that proactive approach instead of being reactive. So instead of us as clinicians not having too much insight into what we're recommending for our patients, and then patients will go off, they'll buy a footy boot, and then there's a problem. So I think that's when we're reactive, but if we can be proactive and have some characteristics in mind of what our patient may potentially need, which is what you both were alluding to, I think that will give us the ability to save patients a little bit of money because hopefully they won't be coming to the clinic all the time to troubleshoot problems that we could potentially avoid if we know what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump off camera again and let Matt and Sam sort of nerd out a little bit on a couple of the great ranges of great shoes that they have across the range here at Ultrafootball and some of the characteristics that might be relevant for us as clinicians to have that understanding of. So I'll hand over to you guys.
Thanks, Talisha. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about boot tech now, which is something that Sam and I share as a very common interest. But for me, having been so focused on MB for the past 11 years, which I've absolutely adored, getting to understand the tech of everything else that's out there has been challenging for me. So I'm under no impression that it can be challenging at times for people who football isn't their first love, it's not their forte. Hopefully after this chat, Sam, we can kind of let people know a couple of things that will work really well. So some things we kind of got to think about, I guess, if we start from the ground up, we've got to look at things. What sole plate should we be choosing first and foremost? Because there's a few options there. We've obviously got firm ground, FG, which is the most common.
Yeah.
What else we got?
We've got non-official ground.
Yeah,
so
AG
type of thing. And we don't have any here, but soft ground, which we don't necessarily see here.
Grounds are a bit hard, aren't they?
A bit harder, but it's more for your boggy European heavy drench type pitch.
Yep.
But we are finding a lot more coming into your higher levels, but not your grassroots type of pitch. But yeah, sole plate's probably, for me, before we get like fit, is obviously incredibly important, and that's such an individual thing. But sole plate is probably just as important because it's our interaction between you and the ground. And this is where we start to hear things like, unfortunately, ACL injuries or syndesmotic injuries where we get stuck in the ground and twist, which is probably a pretty key thing. And we spoke about this last year, is about how important your sole plate is in the overall features of the boot. So which one should we start on?
Well, if we start with the 442, because this has probably got the most traditional outsole that you've got, obviously a boot I know very well. This has these circle studs on the bottom. They're called conical studs. So conical studs are that circular shape. They allow for grip, but they allow for incredibly great traction when turning and changing direction. So that is probably the most traditional type of outsole you will see on a football boot. Most pro level or elite level boots these days are made from nylon as well. So they're super flexible, they're really well balanced, they hold their shape really well. But then we've got some which have chevron or triangular shaped studs, like on the bottom of the Crazy Fast Plus from Adidas, so the X. You can see with these chevron-shaped studs, particularly in the forefoot, they work really well for grip when we're braking and accelerating. So more focused on a lightweight kind of construction, but fast.
And they're quite aggressive when it comes to traction, but that depends on, obviously, the person, because now what we need to do with that type of stud, with a conical type of stud, say like your Mizuno that we have here, that has that little conical thing, it's much easier for you to dig right into the ground, but then to be able to twist and release. Whereas in your chevron stud type of configuration, which you can see here, and what we mean is that 3-point type of arrangement, you need to be able to, as you said, to get in quick, but then to release it just as fast and as easily. And for me, like, this is quite an aggressive type of boot, but you need to be able to fit this to the individual. So that's probably the big thing in terms of that stud pattern, which can increase your risk of rotational injuries. But again, that depends on the player.
Is there a patient or a patient type you would think of who would work well in that boot? Is there a condition that it may benefit, or are we better sticking to conical studs if someone's got forefoot issues?
So this is the big thing. So with forefoot issues, generally would go in a bit of a rule of thumb. Small circular studs are generally better than, say, a chevron component. But the thing is, it comes down to the individual. The big thing with this and the Crazy Fast, it's a little bit more rigid underneath. So it doesn't have as much flex, which is great for, say, forefoot pathologies like a sesamoiditis or a second toe capsulitis, because it's a little bit stiffer, so we're going to hit and come off faster than, say, like our 442, which is a lot more flexible in that regard. So again, coming back down to the individual, so something stiffer like that may be great, whereas in people with some forefoot issues, this may be actually a little bit more detrimental. Probably, Matt, the sole plate that's probably me, that going back to this, that's probably been a bit controversial recently, is what now is on the Nike GX Phantom or GX2, is the Cyclones.
And the Lunar as well.
And the Lunar. So the high cut version and the lower cut version. So if you remember in marketing, especially around the Women's World Cup last year, was this revolutionary type of sole plate that was made, I'm going to use this word probably a little bit poorly, specific for a female athlete. They wanted to decrease the risk of ACLs, and it was a big marketing around that decrease in rotational traction, but still maintaining grip and performance through there. But now Nike's brought that across pretty much onto one of their flagship boots and starting to bring that into the men's game, as well as bring it across to all their pretty much touch type of footwear. The thing I love about this is some internal testing from Nike is that it actually does reduce rotational traction. So again, going back to ACL type injuries. So a player who's spending 12 months out, this may be a great option to start to consider if we do have a history of that. However, I'll put a bit of a grain of salt onto this one, is it's still relatively untried, and we need a little bit more.
Well, it's only been on the market about a year, if even that.
And it's great that they've still continued to push this model, because obviously with the incidence of ACLs in women's sport or even in men's sport, there's higher knee injuries that's starting to come through. So this may be a step in the right direction, but we don't have enough data on that. Funnily enough, I had a player in the other week who had 3 ACLs and was wearing chevron studs each time they did that. But no one had this conversation with them. Hey, let's maybe think about
change
your
your footwear. Yeah.
Let's change your footwear. And often, for me, clinically, that's a conversation I'll have a lot. Is what's your injury history? But what boots were you wearing?
Well, you would do that with running, wouldn't you? Like if you had someone wearing a GT 2000, an Adrenaline, an 860 or whatever, and they kept getting plantar fasciitis, you're like, well, maybe support shoes aren't for you. We need to change that.
And which is a big thing, and that's the thing we're starting to look at with football, is what can we take from the running industry and bring it into the clinical perspective with boots.
Well, that's a good segue, because I think probably the most important thing to think about when our patient is buying new football boots, or in our sense, our customers buying new football boots, is fit.
Yeah.
And football boots aren't just narrow and slimline and, you should only fit them right to your toes and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of considerations to take. So I know that particularly some soccer players love the feeling of touch on the ball, so they want thin uppers and it really close to their toes. But we know from a clinical point of view that that's not ideal, because we want to allow the room for the feet to move if they need, for the toes to splay.
And going back to that, that's probably about finding the right balance with your player. Because if we told them to go get fitted, you must have a centimetre from your longest toe, the player's going to turn around like you've got 2 heads. So you've got to have this happy medium of player perspective as well as clinical perspective, and meeting somewhere in the middle. And often it will be a conversation, let's get fitted and let's maybe go up half a size and start to broach and get that education from it. But what you're alluding to probably is around something for wider fitting people, which is most of us here in the population. I know that you're probably a little bit more across
the Takala, for sure.
Takala, which is probably a great boot for, say, someone with wide feet. And as a clinician, this is often the one we'll hear. What boot suits a wide-footed person? And our mate Noah Kavanagh speaks quite highly and quite regularly of wide-fitted boots, and that's one of these things he adds into it. But for me, for someone with a wide fit, it's probably the Takala, or now maybe the Adidas Predator, which is probably one of the widest boots on the market.
Yeah.
Which is a huge step away from that traditional Adidas or Adidas model, which is to be quite streamlined, quite narrow. But now they're coming with great width into it. So someone with a very broad foot, it's a fantastic version.
Well, I think brands are acknowledging the fact that our toes splay when we toe off from the ground. And so needing that extra space within the toe box allows us to propel forward much more efficiently. And alluding to what you were saying about changing direction and having to toe off quickly, we're able to do that in the forefoot of these kind of boots. So yes, boots do fit much more streamlined, much more kind of close to your feet than running shoes do. And we don't traditionally fit football boots like we are with running shoes, having that thumbnail space at the front. So having boots with extra depth in them is also really important. So the Takala and then also the Phantom GX are 2 of the deepest fitting boots through the midfoot. That also means that they've got great depth in the heel. Like you can just see there how deep the Takala is for fitting a slimline device into your shoe if you need to. If that patient needs a little bit of extra support, maybe they wear orthotics in their running shoes, you don't want them to spend, 2 training sessions in a game, so maybe 6 hours a week, running in football boots, which are low profile but no support.
And that's the hard thing, is when you're starting to break down with orthotics or a device, is sometimes some players do need that. And it can be near on impossible to get something in there without throwing the player off, saying, no, it's too bulky, it's too big. And if you put 1.5 mil in there, they're going to feel it. Then, heaven forbid, I put an orthotic in there, you're just been pushing it uphill a little bit more. So yeah, that deeper type of boot, and your Takala, even your Nike, but even your Adi and say your 442, it's a fantastic thing. So as a pod, you go, great, that just makes life so much easier that we can now have room to work and move. It's a great time for football boots as a clinician.
There is just as much tech and research and design that goes into these kind of things that's going into running at the moment, which is just like football is just undergoing this huge renaissance. We're seeing in this country as well. Soccer is obviously the highest participated sport in the country. So there are over 2,500 registered clubs in this country, which, we're hoping to one day talk to all of them, but we'll get there. But there's things like, you look at, I know we've spoken about the X Crazy Fast Plus a little bit, but having such a lightweight boot, like in a men's 9.5, this comes in about 170 grams, weighs nothing, but it's got some really cool stuff. It's actually quite deep at the heel, which like you can see how far my finger gets in there. Like you wouldn't expect that from a lightweight boot. It has what Adidas call an aero cage on the inside, so it's got this skeletal support system through the midfoot to actually lock you down quite well. And then the forefoot's got a decent amount of depth. It's not the deepest boot on the market, but also with this external heel counter, you're actually getting some support around there. Speed boots traditionally have been as low profile and the least amount of tech as possible. Then you go to things like the Luna and the GX2, which have this amazing ridging through the forefoot to give you better grip with the ball, but then also asymmetrical lacing to sit around the top of your foot more efficiently.
Which is fantastic. Like, right now, it is a fantastic time for technology. We haven't had an update really for 25 years. And now we're starting to get these wonderful things. Like, gone are the days where a speed boot like your Evo Speed, which will last you 10 games because they were just so light. Now, as the materials are starting to become better, stronger, our construction's becoming better. That we can go lighter and still maintain that structural integrity. And which is fantastic. So, like, going back to your Crazy Fast with, like, your speed cage that you'd also see on your Mercurial, it gives a lot of midfoot type of support. And you'd think that, which weighs 170
grams,
170 grams, that it wouldn't be supporting your foot at all.
Yeah.
That now you can actually really get a good lock in and good lock down of a boot that traditionally would fall apart maybe after 10 games, and you can play longer, you can play harder. Going back to the thing, if you're forking out $300 odd for a pair of boots, that's
$460 for those ones.
$460.
Yeah, the plus model.
I might have to use the medical
code,
referral system. But the big thing with that is it's an investment that you can now have faith in a boot to last you a season if used correctly, or to be used on the right surface, which if you're using an FG on an AG, please don't. I can talk why on another time, but this is the thing that we're looking at. It's a great time in tech. But you've got probably, for me, my overall favourite boot ever.
Yeah, so this is one of your favourite boots?
It is one of my favourite boots.
The Morelia Neo Beta?
Beta, like the made in Japan is probably the creme de la creme, but the Beta as a takedown version, which is not your top of the line elite boot, but something that we can have a little bit more affordable. It is just a wonderful fit. As you've mentioned before, it's 5 layers of wonderful interwoven technology that just fits really well. It's light as all get out. It's got incredible lockdown and lacing. And when people put it on, they never go back to any other boot. It is probably one of the best boots on the market. But for me, and going through what I'm incredibly passionate about, is blister prevention. That little bit on the heel collar or around the heel counter
and in here
has not a huge amount of cushioning, but it's enough to really decrease the shear forces going around that heel. And what we'll find in recent literature, the most common area of discomfort in football boots is the heel. 82% of professional women's footballers find discomfort at the heel.
Well, I think it's one thing that we all remember, particularly from when we were kids. You'd get a new pair of boots and you'd have to spend 3 weeks wearing them in because they just shear away at your Achilles and your heels. So brands these days are making sure that the heel counters are still thermoplastic, like we're using in running shoes. Obviously not quite as thick, but really focused on the materials that they're using in the back. There's a lot of suede, there's a lot of leather going into the back of football boots, particularly a lot of memory foam. So NB and Mizuno have been two of the better brands here when it comes to support.
And it's been fantastic. So, like, often one of the key modifications I will do in a boot is I will rip out material from the back of the heel if it's too big or bulbous, obviously causing shear deformation of the skin and pressure of skin moving over bone. But the MB, the Mizuno, as we spoke about, but even Adidas at the moment are doing a fantastic version. Again, different materials, really looking at the anatomy of your heel bone rather than going back and putting something in there that's incredibly light, incredibly rigid. Good luck to you. Nike had a boot in 2012 that came with a disclaimer saying these boots will give you blisters. How can you market that? So, but again, it's just a great time, and the material tech into that is probably the biggest thing.
Well, one thing I wanted to highlight with this and with the Tekela is the shape of their heel counters. So you can see with both of them, they're quite curved through the heel. This actually allows both the Phantom Lunar and the Tekela to be reasonably suitable for someone who's got a Haglund's deformity. So we want to make sure that we're taking pressure off the Achilles. So that's been a huge thing in football development as well, is being careful about the autonomy of how a heel looks.
And it's quite soft and it's quite pliable, and you can do modifications. You can heat it up, you can push it out, but it's not going to be overtly compressive. So someone with a Haglund's or an insertional Achilles tendinopathy, we're not going to get that compressive force onto the heel, which is great. So going back to the patient you have in front of you, you can put a heel lift in there. Or if you don't want to get it there, it just takes that compression off, which is a key component in this type of tendinopathy. Same with your Lunar there. It's wonderful. It's soft. It's pliable. It's a great boot, but it's just great for little things. And for that to come on the market is a godsend. We can do a lot with this.
And I said the word autonomy before. That's not the word I meant at all. I meant anatomy. So we'll move on from that. Just to wrap us up, Sammy, we sort of mentioned about your favourite boot here in the range. I kind of wanted to... I've had my eyes opened in the last kind of month, I guess. When you work for one brand in particular, you're focused heavily on that space. And I don't think I'm ever going to lose my love for MB. But a boot that's kind of taken me by surprise, and one that we've seen in the last month and a half have some resurgence, is the Adidas Predator 24. For those of you who are OG football fans, you'll remember the days of Beckham and Zinedine Zidane wearing the fold-over tongue version of the boot. I would have one here with me now if we hadn't sold them out. But we bought overs of the last. You might have seen the Solar Energy pack, which was black and white with a bit of highlight yellow through it. We had bought enough stock to last us for a couple of months, and we sold out in 2 weeks. It was just crazy. But the reason I like this boot is not only does it have a really great external heel counter, but the control frame outsole is very, very sturdy. On the white one, you can't see it so well, but there is actually an extra layer of thermoplastic on the lateral heel, which gives us more support when we're hitting the ground. And then in the forefoot, there's reinforcement under our first mat. So we're going to be really structured in that space. Plus, I really enjoy the width that's in the forefoot. I've got probably a D to a 2E foot, and I fit in those without any issues, which is great.
It's a fantastic boot. And again, I know I said that's my favourite. I'm allowed to have a second favourite or a close second. But again, like going back to that lateral truss or that lateral support, it's incredibly great for, say, someone with a fifth met pathology, where the distance between so your front hind, bit of a funny way of putting it.
Yeah,
but
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, your front lateral stud and as you're starting to come into the forefoot, the distance between these 2 points is actually quite small as compared to, say, your Phantom, which is actually incredibly long. So as we know in fifth met type of pathologies, it's that shear force, or it's that bending force that's coming through this fifth metatarsal. And in soccer especially, it's a really common foot pathology that we'll see, just because of the actions where you're whipping onto the lateral side.
Well, the Tekela's a good option for that too, because it's actually got this really kind of ingenious idea of these lateral teeth around the outsole, and so you can see that the gaps there between the rear studs and the forefoot studs is short as well. So that's kind of got us back full circle to where we started, to where we've come from. So it's been awesome talking tech with you. I'm sure Talisha's got a couple more things to say. But thanks for having us on and letting us talk to talk to you about football boots.
Cheers. Thanks, T.
No, thank you so much for lending us your brain, Sam and Matt, and I really appreciate, and I'm sure everyone watching appreciates as well, just you devoting your time and your immense knowledge to us here. Like every time I catch up with you two, I learn an absolute truckload because I'm the first to admit that football boots and managing the nuanced football-related injuries is not 100% my wheelhouse. Musculoskeletal, yes. Boot fit, that's why you guys are here. So hopefully everyone's got a lot out of this. And if you are a member of Gait Footwear Movement, our monthly CPD subscription, we do have Sam Turner giving us a real deep dive into podiatric and even physiotherapists if you do manage football boot related injuries. So I've listed some of the other injuries that were mentioned just before. We do have a CPD month coming up with Sam that tackles all of that. So what we've done here today with the guys and that webinar will complement very, very well. So that's it from me. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Talisha.
And yeah, we'll catch you guys next time. Cheers.